Hi, I'm Tony from the Australian Window Association. Today, we're going to be installing a double glazed aluminium sliding door into a clad wall using some installation techniques to improve thermal performance. Tools we need include a spirit level, a tape measure, hammer, chisel, staple gun, utility knife, drill, impact driver, snips. There are a few things we will need. Fixing screws, either stainless steel or galvanised. Packers, like the ones shown here, or you may prefer to use timber wedges. Tape, Alcor for our sill tray, self-adhesive expanding tape for high performance thermal insulation. We also need some flashing. There are a number of different types. Flashing and weatherproofing of the opening is probably the most important part of the installation process, and is particularly important in high wind and exposed locations. The sill flashing is fitted to the bottom of the window and extends on either side at least 150 millimetres. The jamb flashing should be at least 150 millimetres wide and attached to both sides of the window, starting 150 millimetres above the window and continues down to overlap the sill flashing. Where the top of the window is not protected by the eaves, it will be necessary to fit a head flashing. The head flashing should be fixed to the wall frame or into the internal brickwork above the window and extend outward to cover the head of the window and overlap the jamb flashing on each side. This principle of overlap is important, as it should provide that at each transition water is directed outward onto the element below, so that any water that penetrates the outer skin of the structure is directed out and away. Many window suppliers can pre-fit flashings, so remember to ask when ordering your windows if this is an option. We need to check the door opening to make sure it is the right size. The opening should be about 20 millimetres bigger in height and width than the overall size of the door, including the reveal. You should check the opening is reasonably plumb, level and square, and also that the bottom of the opening is straight, as the door sill needs to be fully supported along its length. We need to fit a sill flashing tray. Cut off enough flashing to cover the full width of the opening with about 150 millimetres extra on each side. Lay the flashing in the opening, roughly in the centre, and fold it up at each end. We need to fold the flashing to form a tray. The internal leg needs to fold up about 20 millimetres. Cut and fold the corners like so. Fit the flashing into the opening. Next, we need to install the sarking. Feel for the opening from the outside. At the head, we cut the sarking off flush with the opening. Cut about 100 millimetres in from the stud and fold back in like this and staple in place. You may need to remove cover strips or cover plates to access the best fixing points in the jamb. Pre-drill the door for the fixing screws. To improve the thermal efficiency of this door, we're going to fit expanding foam to the outside of the door frame, which when installed will expand up to 4 times its original thickness to close the gap around the door, thus reducing air infiltration and insulate the opening. Position the door over the sill flashing in the centre of the opening. As this is a really heavy double glazed unit, we've removed the door panel to make the frame lighter and easier to handle. Level the sill using packers. The door sill needs to be fully supported and straight for the door to operate properly, so make sure the sill has no twist, bow or roll. Adjust the door so that the inside of the reveal lines up with the wall lining, either plasterboard or fibre cement in wet areas. In most cases, this will be 10 millimetres, but check if thicker lining is being used, as this may affect where the reveal needs to sit. I'm using a piece of 12 millimetre ply to allow for glue and setting materials. Fix the top corners in place. Check the jambs are plumb using your level and adjust the door position as necessary to make sure the frame is plumb, level and square. This may take a few goes to get right, but it's important, so take your time. Once you're happy the door is sitting right, fix off the rest of the frame using screws or nails with a gauge and spacing appropriate for the wind load. Be sure to fix near the lock striker. Reinstall the door panel and as a final check, open and close the door a few times to make sure the lock operates correctly. You may have to adjust the rollers to fine-tune this operation of the door. Refit the cover plates, and to finish off, tap the sill flashing into the sill for a nice neat finish. See here the expanding foam doing its job just nicely. Fit the jamb flashing to either side of the door, starting 150mm above the opening. The jamb flashing should be at least 150mm wide and sealed to the door frame. It should extend 150mm below and be fitted over the sill flashing to direct any water captured onto the sill flashing below. Where the top of the door is not protected by the eaves, it is necessary to fit a head flashing. Head flashing should be fixed to the wall frame above the door and cover the head. Usually this is either a pressed metal Z flashing or Alcor. This one I had pressed up and cut and folded the ends using this detail. The head flashing should go under the sarking, so we will need to cut a slit 150mm out from each side of the window to tuck it under. You will notice the head flashing sits on top of the jamb flashing and the jamb flashing overlaps the sill flashing. There are quite a few different types of cladding used nowadays, and each type will need a slightly different approach. The most common varieties are shiplap, like we're using here, vinyl or composite boards, and fibre cement sheeting. You should always follow the manufacturer's installation details for each. It is important when fitting the cladding up to the jambs that the cladding is positioned closely to the door frame, but do not push up on the frame to create a bow. Ideally, we should allow a few millimetres clearance. Gaps should be caulked using a paintable flexible sealant. Well, that's it for this video. Check out the other videos in this series for information on installing other window types. Thanks for watching.